racing against the clock in Chariots of Fire, one of 4 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Sneak Previews. Across the aisle from me, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And this is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. Well, I think Chariots of Fire is one of the year's best films, and we also have some other good films on this program, including Stevie, starring Glenda Jackson, and Southern Comfort, a thriller set in Louisiana Bayou country. But now Gene starts with a comedy called All the Marbles.
All the Marbles is the latest movie from Peter Falk, who seems to alternate between making serious pictures and making mindless fluff. And All the Marbles really is mindless fluff. It has Falk playing the manager of 2 women wrestlers who work together as a tag team and dream of a championship fight. Falk, however, can only think of cheap gimmicks to promote them. He tells them his latest idea during a training session.
You know, I had a thought, an idea for you girls. It's not fully realized, but it could be sensational.
We are not getting tattooed, Harry.
No, I'm cold on that. I got a better one. You dye your hair.
So what else is new?
Not just the hair on your head. I'm talking about your eyebrows. When you raise your arm, you know, under there, the fuzz over here. And it doesn't have to be vulgar. I'm talking about pretty colors. Because there's nothing more beautiful than frost-colored hair. Or a lovely silvery blonde color that picks up the light when you go into the ring.
That stinks.
You're wrong. It fits in with today. Did you know that in Paris, the high-fashion models, I'll show you a picture, women's wear daily.
We decided we want to be the one tag team without a gimmick, remember?
Yeah, but not your legs. You shave your legs.
Stupid idea. You think this up by yourself or did you have help?
What's wrong with it?
We look like a couple of clowns. That's what's wrong with it. The idea stinks.
All right. Have it your way, doll. Just remember, you only got so many chances at the brass ring, and you better take every one of them, because when you run out of turns, kid, that's it. You got the picture? Now move. You're slow.
Boy, it really seems that Peter Falk is trapped in his Columbo TV character there, mumbling gags that seem beneath his intelligence and stumbling all around. The film is totally preposterous, asking us to believe that those 2 shapely women wrestlers, played by Vicki Frederick and Laureen Landon, would really have to struggle to get wrestling matches booked in a sport that's filled mostly with chunky types. Of course, if you like seeing women beat each other up, this is your kind of movie with a half a dozen fights, including one in which the women go against a tag team called the Toledo Tigers on the Tigers' home turf.
I told you to watch the chicken.
Back to your car.
Right, you can't do that. Hey, Red, you can do a lot, but you can't do that. You're going to get yours, kid. You want my honest opinion? You're a horse.
All right, let's finish this
It's
off.
the beginning, folks.
Get away, Iris!
Turn it around, Iris. You can turn this thing around.
No! Air!
Yes, sir, that's my baby. No problem, sweetheart. Stay loose.
Come on, get up, get up. Like you know what you're doing. Get up, man.
Off me, you double-crossing tanker! After I make the pin, sweetheart. Get up! Get up!
Beautiful, honey. You got it. Yeah. Get out of here.
Of course, the reason the crowd is booing is that they're rooting for their hometown fighters. All of the fight scenes in this movie get kind of depressing after a while. There must be at least, and I don't think I'm exaggerating, 100 body slams and hair pullings in this picture. So let's see, let's add it up.
Okay.
A lead character that gets annoying after a while, a plot structure that doesn't make any sense. I guess you get the point. I was not amused by All the Marbles.
I'm in agreement with you right down the
Yeah.
line on this. I didn't think it was a very good picture either. I want to say, though, one thing, a kind of a vote of appreciation to those 2 actresses, Vicki Frederick and Laureen Landon, because a lot of people turn up in bad movies. That doesn't mean they didn't work hard on the movie when they were making it. And it is obvious, you could see it in that scene, you can see it all through the film, that those actresses are doing their own stunts. They are really in the ring, they are really wrestling, they're taking those falls, they're flying through the air out of the ring. would have been a lot more boring and a lot less interesting if they'd used stunt doubles and tricks of various sorts in order to cover up the fact that they weren't really there.
And they're not professional wrestlers.
No,
they are actresses. At the same time, I think this is going to be one of the unsung performances because I think that the rest of the film is really sort of depressing. It's nothing more than sort of a drive-in movie that's been built up big because of Peter Falk.
I feel in a way the movie lets those actresses down. They work real hard to get their wrestling, and then there's no story, no characters around them to make it worthwhile, that kind of effort.
I agree.
Our next film, Southern Comfort, is about a group of Louisiana National Guardsmen who march out into the swampy, cold, and wet bayou country to practice war games, get involved in a real war with the local Cajuns, a war that in this movie also seems to symbolize our national experience in Vietnam. Now, these National Guardsmen are not seasoned combat veterans. They're weekend warriors, a high school coach, office workers, family men. They bite off more than they can chew when they offend the Cajuns by cutting their fishing lines, stealing their boats, and shooting blanks at them. And in revenge, the Cajuns begin to pick them off one by one. And in this scene, the jittery guardsmen who have just buried 3 of their dead start shooting blanks at the almost invisible enemy.
Hey!
Dug them up. They dug them all up.
The film maintains that level of intensity all the way through, and you have a lot of situations where the Cajuns are setting traps like that in which they seem to control the bayou and control the trees. The Cajuns in Southern Comfort sometimes seem almost supernatural. Other times they remind us of the Viet Cong, moving through the bayous without being seen, killing the guardsmen at will, always seeming to know what their victims are going to do next. In this scene, one of the Cajuns finally shows himself to 2 of the guardsmen, Keith Carradine and Powers Booth, and tells them how they can escape.
I'm not going to kill y'all if I don't got to. They got a bayou over here. Take it. Stay to the west side. You want to find a road about a mile up there.
Do you mind telling us what's going on?
My buddies, they're not nice like me.
Are we supposed to say thanks?
You're not supposed to say nothing, soldier.
They take his advice and stumble out to what they hope is a safe Cajun village.
Relax, Hardin. These are the good Cajuns. Some other guys are a long ways back.
You relax.
Look at those 2 guys. What 2 guys?
Getting out the boat.
Yeah.
You think they're the ones that have been after us?
Hell, I don't know. I never seen them.
I think it's them.
Don't go getting paranoid on me.
I got reason to be paranoid, and so do you. They gotta kill us. We're the only witnesses.
Don't sweat it. They can't pull anything here in front of everybody.
Allons danser.
Huh?
Allons danser.
Don't say.
Danser.
Excusez-moi.
Hey!
The Cajuns in this movie seem to come from a slightly different planet. They're almost alien, and it's kind of scary. Southern Comfort is a superior thriller for a couple of reasons. One is the movie's effective use of locations. It was shot in winter in that bayou, and the sheer grim reality of the surroundings makes this movie seem very real. The characters seem real, too. They're well acted, and they come across like civilians who are way in over their heads. If the movie has a weakness, it's at the level of its symbolism. Since we're acutely conscious that these guys and their struggles represent America and Vietnam, we sometimes get hung up on the meaning of scenes instead of just letting them unfold naturally. Well, that's a problem, but it's not an overwhelming problem. And Southern Comfort is a very well-made action picture, and maybe just a little bit more.
I think it's terrific. I think I liked it more than you did, and it's because the Vietnam stuff didn't bother me one bit. I'm thinking of the last Vietnam picture, Apocalypse Now. I think this film contains all the ideas of that film and delivers them just as economically, or more economically. I'm thinking of just the arrogance of, you know, the Cajuns are a little bit different than we are, different parentage, different color, so we can go in and cut their lines, take their boats, because we're better. I mean, that's really what underlies the actions of the National Guard in this thing. We're on our mission.
We're on assignment here.
Yeah, and I think the film really delivers that beautifully, while at the same time, in delivering that serious idea, it's still a terrific action picture with very few valleys and a lot of peak action.
I think this is the best film so far by Walter Hill, the director. His credits include The Long Riders and The Warriors, which a lot of people saw. And in those films and a lot of his films, he likes to have kind of two tribes at war with each other, and then the tribes stand for ideas. And the Warriors, they were basically two Greek tribes, if you will. Here, I think, the ideas do not get in the way as much as they did in his earlier films, and the people come to the forefront more.
Also, I think this film has an idea that justifies its violence, and the idea is that it is all right and it's legitimate. If somebody takes a shot at you, that you can shoot back to kill. Because these Cajuns do not know that they're shooting blanks at them in the beginning of the film, and so they come back with violence, and it seems perfectly justifiable. I think the film is really strong, and I like our next film even better. It's a 4-year-old movie that was put on its shelf for a while because its first engagement in this country was a disaster, and only now is it receiving the kind of national release it deserves. It's called Stevie, and it stars Glenda Jackson in an exceptional performance as a late English poet, Stevie Smith, who lived most of her life with her aunt in a modest suburban London cottage and managed to write some very tough poetry that poked fun at the church, at the establishment, and its social customs, while at the same time her poetry showed a great compassion for people who are in emotional pain. The movie mostly takes place inside Stevie Smith's home, with Glenda Jackson delivering Stevie Smith's words, sometimes to herself, sometimes to her aunt, and an awful lot of the time directly to us. She talks about many subjects, and in this scene, she ridicules the way a so-called proper lady is supposed to attract a so-called proper gentleman.
As I grew older, I guessed copulation must be first-class fun, but I'd no idea how one set about it, or indeed how one found a suitable mate.
Just like that girl in the paper.
What girl?
Didn't I tell you?
No.
Oh, I'm sure I told you.
Not a word.
Well, this girl wrote to the paper and said she'd seen a young man at the tennis club she'd joined, so as not to feel lonely and to get herself fixed up with a house or a flat and a baby. Anyway, this young man would do, she thought. He was all right. The question was, how could she get him to propose? They hadn't actually spoken, you see, so how could she make him propose? Well, they published an answer and they said, arrange to play the last set with him, then linger hopefully, and perhaps he will see you home.
Oh, what a wonderful phrase, linger hopefully.
Linger hopefully, and perhaps he will see you home.
Can't you just see it? Up and down the suburbs, up and down the provincial towns, up and down India and Singapore and Shanghai, there are girls who have arranged to play the last set and are lingering hopefully.
One of the nicest parts of the film is that loving and supportive and deeply familiar relationship between Stevie and her aunt, played by the wonderful veteran English actress Mona Washburn. But it is really the quality of Glenda Jackson's performance that makes this film so special. She does what very few actors can do, which is look directly into the camera in a movie, look directly at us, and still remain in character as Stevie Smith. And she does that in this scene, telling us about the trouble she has at parties. She's just come home from a poetry reading.
Dear, oh dear parties. I do love them, but really so tiring. By the time I've got myself ready, I'm totally exhausted, and I arrive looking like the sheeted dead. Miss Stevie Smith, they call, and in I walk, the sheeted dead.
Peggy?
Yes, it's me. I'm back. And I never know what to do with my hands. I keep thinking, what should I do with my hands? Plus the ghastly business of having to find the bathroom. Whenever I'm excited, I have to dash straight for the bathroom. Nervous enteritis, they call it. Straight for the bathroom. It's so embarrassing, especially with strangers.
Peggy, is that you?
Yes, it's me. The Lion Aunt has become a dreadful worrier. She worries about everything these days. She doesn't go out much either. Well, hardly at all. She thinks the house stood so much during the war that now it mustn't be left. I know how she feels. It certainly stood an awful lot.
I enjoyed this film as much as any I've seen this year. To watch it is to really enter into a long and fascinating conversation with a delightful new friend. And during the course of this movie, we feel as though we really become good friends with Stevie Smith. We encounter nothing less than the life and thoughts of a very bright and sensitive woman portrayed with uncommon honesty by Glenda Jackson. Terrific.
I think maybe it's that honesty that makes the film work so well, because reading the script or hearing about the idea, you might think, well, this is going to be real literary, it's going to be a stunt, it's going to be a film of a stage
Boring,
play.
too, yeah.
It's going to be boring. And actually, very few things happen in Stevie Smith's life. She lived in that suburb all of her life.
Right.
She lived there with her aunt until the aunt died. She turned down a marriage proposal. She was depressed. She wrote poetry. She gave poetry readings, and yet the movie grips you from beginning to end. And the line that I remember from the film most unforgettably is, she's talking about a man who's way out at sea and he's drowning, but everybody thinks he's waving, and she says, it's the same with me. I'm not, not waving, but drowning. And that's what she was doing in those suburbs, going crazy, and we can really identify with that.
And I just want to stress, I don't think I have seen a performance to equal this one. It is very difficult to do that, to stay in character, to look right at the audience and stay in character. You must really be that character to be able to do something as bold as that.
I'm glad that this film is doing such good business on its resurrected new life after having originally been thought to be uncommercial.
I hope it gets all around the country. That'd be great.
I hope so, too. We come now to a movie named Chariots of Fire, which I've already said I think is one of the year's best films. It's also one of the most intelligent, one of the most emotionally moving films I've seen in a long... In fact, it's a great film. The film takes place in the early 1920s. It's based on the true stories of two English Olympic runners. One is the son of Jewish immigrants. The other comes from Protestant missionary stock, and both become runners for different reasons. The Jew wants to triumph over anti-Semitism. Christian wants to run to celebrate the glory of God. They both live in an England where values were very badly shaken up by World War I, but now an England that's trying to reestablish its subtle system of class and racial discrimination. In this scene, the two runners meet for the first time in a locker room before their race.
Mr. Abrahams? Mr. Little, I'd like to wish you the best of success.
Thank you. And may the best man win.
Get to your marks. Get set.
Losing doesn't come easily for Harold Abrahams, and he shares his heartbreak with his girlfriend.
He was ahead. There was nothing you could have done. He won fair and square.
Well, that's that, Abrahams.
Well, if you can't take a beating, perhaps it's for the best.
I don't run to take beatings. I run to win. If I can't win, I won't run.
If you don't run, you can't win. Give me a ring when you've sorted that one out.
I just don't know what to do.
Try growing up.
You can see there that this movie's real subject is not running, but winning, and making a passionate statement with that victory. For both runners, sports competition represents a whole system of moral beliefs. And in this scene, the other runner, Eric Little, explains to the Prince of Wales and to the Olympic Committee why he will not run on Sunday.
Make yourself comfortable. Cigar? Oh, no, of course you don't. Nor drink. Such is the resolution of the young man you have before you, gentlemen.
Lord Birkenhead has advised us as to your attitude towards your participation in the 100 meters heats, Little. Or would your non-participation be more accurate?
It would, sir, yes.
We were also consulted as to the correct manner in which to approach the French.
Something we just can't allow to happen. Going cap in hand to the frogs, of all people. Simply out of the question.
Simple matter of national dignity, Little. Being a patriot, I'm sure you understand.
Well, I must say, sir, I felt it was an impractical suggestion from the start.
Well, why didn't you damn well say so, man? As an athlete, you value economy of effort.
I wanted to run. And I was desperate enough to try anything. Well, all that being understood, we decided to invite you in for a little chat to see if there's any way that we can help resolve the situation.
There's only one way to resolve the situation. That's for this man to change his mind and run.
Don't state the obvious, Cadogan. We've to explore ways in which we can help this young man to reach that decision.
I'm afraid there are no ways, sir. I won't run on the Sabbath, and that's final.
You can really feel the tension there under the surface between those pillars of the establishment and this young man who knows what he believes in. Chariots of Fire is a great sports movie, but it's also a lot more than just a sports movie. It does have a lot of running in it. It does build up to the 1924 Olympics, but it doesn't just build up suspense about who's going to win the big race. It also makes us think about the connections between competition and human nature. And here's what I mean. This movie takes place just at the exact moment in Olympic history when technology and training began to replace determination and willpower. And that's where the movie's conflict lies, the conflict between scientific coaching techniques on the one hand, and on the other hand, the simple belief that you can win the race if you just want to win it badly enough. The two runners represent the two sides of that question. Chariots of Fire is enormously exciting at times, very thoughtful at other times. When the film was over, I was very deeply moved, and I want to say it, this is a great film.
And where we differ, because I enjoyed the film too, is that I don't think it's great. I didn't get any time in the film that quality that lifts the film into greatness. I mean, we were just talking about this movie Stevie, and there was a quality in the performance I mentioned of Glenda Jackson I thought was exceptional. I didn't get that same kind of extra special feeling out of this film. I thought it was beautifully made, well acted, competently done as can be. No one would have a bad time while watching it, certainly not that. But I just saw the film moving along with the two parallel stories, culminating in the big race, and that's all I went with it.
There is probably nothing I can say that will convince you that you had the kind of experience I had.
Or at least we're being straight about it.
Right. I felt that technically the movie was superb, that the music, the soundtrack, is very important in terms of creating the emotional impact of this film. But there is something that goes on in a few films in my life where I just know that I'm sitting there and I'm transfixed by what's going on the screen. I'm very deeply affected. And it's totally subjective. There's nothing I can argue you out of or into.
I agree. And all I can say is, again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just not saying it's as great as you did.
Well, here is a great one. Sparky the Wonder Dog leaping into the balcony to help us pick out the dogs of the week's worst movies.
Well, my dog this week is a rip-off skin flick called Fantasies. It's about 8 years old. The only reason it's being re-released now around the country is it stars a teenage actress named Kathleen Collins, who has since changed her name to Bo Derek. You may have heard of her. Fantasies is the story of a young woman experiencing growing pains as she is tossed and turned between two men, but who cares about that? The big question is, does Bo Derek take her clothes off?
Does she?
Yes, but she does it only twice, once for a bath and the other time for a brief lovemaking session, and the film is rated R, so it's all quite tame and in soft, fuzzy focus. It's just a miserable film, and you can safely avoid Fantasies.
Thanks for the tip, Gene. My dog this week is Hell Night, starring Linda Blair, who was possessed by the devil in The Exorcist and had her brain fried in The Heretic. Now she must undergo the most inhuman experience of all, a fraternity Hell Week. You got it. This is another one of those dead teenager movies. They're all just about the same. Every one of them starts out with several dozen teenagers and winds up with several dozen dead teenagers. In Hell Night, the cast spends the night creeping through a deserted mansion where a whole family was murdered long ago. They were all murdered except for the youngest son, a freak who is described as a gork. Well, my dictionary doesn't define gork, but apparently, judging by the film, Gorks are creatures who live in a mad slasher movie and kill teenagers. Well, that means Gorks can't be all bad. Look at it this way. Someone didn't kill those teenagers, those movies would never end. In fact, I think we owe this Gork a vote of thanks.
All right, so much for the dogs. Now to recap our reaction to the main movies on this show. Neither one of us like All the Marbles with Peter Falk as the manager of two lady wrestlers. It's a silly story and too much hair pulling. 2 no votes for that. We both enjoyed Walter Hill's dramatic Louisiana Bayou story, Southern Comfort, a gripping parallel to the Vietnam War. And we both admired Glenda Jackson as British poet Stevie Smith in Stevie, a 4-year-old film that is just now making its way around the country. We both recommend you see it. And we agreed once again on Chariots of Fire, the story of 2 very different runners on the 1924 British Olympic team. I enjoyed the film, but Roger thinks it's one of the year's finest.
You liked it. I thought it was one of the year's best. I liked Stevie, and you thought it was one of the year's best.
Okay.
So we have a couple of good finds.
And one more, which is Southern Comforts, because I think, I can't remember a film show where we had 3 strong films like that. All good.
Okay, that's it for this week. Next time on Sneak Previews, we'll take a look at more new movies, including Body and Soul, starring Leon Isaac Kennedy and Jane Kennedy, and Looker, starring Albert Finney, tracking a murderer. So join us next time on Sneak Previews, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.